been a while, so we get it. Why am I holding a controller? I'm bugging. Say some fucking China, bro. It's been a while. I don't even remember what I'm supposed to do, but we're gonna do it. Let's get this fucking money, bro. Like, I ain't playing around. get it.
是的，长官。是的，长官。是的，长官。是的，长官。
341 million people. It's kind of crazy. Where's the guy at? Damn it, this shit gotta take. This shit's taking forever.
At a meeting of the G7, U.S. President Joe Biden announced that he would greenlight any effort by allies to send F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. This was a significant step forward in Ukraine's bid to get its hand on Western military aircraft, and one Russia is so afraid of, it immediately launched a new fear offensive on Western media. The move is reminiscent of Germany laying the groundwork down for the transfer of Leopard battle tanks to Ukraine, although significantly more transparent, given that Germany seemed incredibly reluctant to allow anyone to send the tanks to Ukraine. However, it's important because much like Germany and the Leopard tank, the US controls the export license for the F-16. Arms sales typically come with conditions that a receiving party will not attempt to export purchased weapons to a third party without the permission of the supplier. This is to prevent proliferation of very advanced weapon systems into conflicts that their manufacturers don't want them to play a part in. In the US's case, it's blocked previous attempts to transfer advanced weapons to various sides in conflicts, fearing it would either make the US look bad or be destabilizing. The green light, though, means that now anybody who owns an F-16 has official US approval to ship them to Ukraine without asking for permission. But at least so far, the US won't be supplying any of its own, and with good reason. With war in the Pacific against China brewing, the US is unlikely to want to risk depleting its stockpile of modern fighter aircraft, especially when said war will almost entirely be a sea and air battle for US forces, and is predicted to be a very high attrition conflict. We've seen similar excuses from European powers as they transfer paltry numbers of tanks to Ukraine, only they aren't facing the realistic threat of a war in their neighborhood. Everybody from Germany to Portugal has claimed that they can only send small numbers of tanks because of their own defense needs. As we've pointed out previously, unless the Russians develop teleportation technology, there's no chance a T-72 is going to wind up in Puerto del Sol in Madrid. The ground war Europe thinks it needs its tanks for is already being waged in Ukraine, and Russia's material stockpiles are so low that the best weapon it has to invade the rest of Europe with is harsh words. So who's going to be handing over F-16s to Ukraine, and why the sudden reversal when just months ago President Biden said he wouldn't even consider it? Perhaps unsurprisingly, the Baltic states have long been supportive of giving Ukraine access to advanced Western jets. Given that they're on the front line of any escalation with Russia, it's hardly surprising that they have a keen interest in seeing as many Russian forces defeated on the battlefield as possible. Even less surprisingly, Poland has been eagerly advocating for the transfer of F-16s and has 48 of its own that might be up for grabs, although this is unlikely until the nation receives a replacement such as the F-35. Unlike Spain, Germany, or France, Poland has a real reason to fear a war with Russia, given that it borders both the Russian militarized enclave of Kaliningrad and a Russian puppet state, Belarus. Even then, given the vigorous support Poland has provided for Ukraine to date, we wouldn't be surprised if the entire Polish Air Force suddenly defected and joined the Ukrainian Air Force. France has also been supportive of the effort to transfer jets to Ukraine, though it has no F-16s of its own. Instead, France operates the Rafale fighter and the Dassault Mirages. It could likely afford to donate a few airframes to Ukraine, but this would be counterproductive. The donation of the Challenger 2 battle tank to Ukraine was largely a symbolic act meant to break the German deadlock and constant moving of the goalposts about the Leopard tank. The few tanks it did send may not even see combat duty, simply because of the difficulty fulfilling the logistical needs of how two different foreign fleets of tanks on top of its own. But tanks aren't nearly as difficult to maintain as fighter aircraft, which need on average about 2 hours of maintenance for every hour of flight. Thus, France has offered instead to help train Ukrainian pilots on F-16s, either by donating some of its pilots experienced with the plane or helping cover the costs of training. Britain likewise has offered to help with the logistics and cost of training rather than donate any actual aircraft itself. Britain doesn't operate the F-16 and had previously stated that it would take too long to train pilots on the Eurofighters that it does operate. Arguably, if the effort had started last summer, when it became clear Ukraine would not fold to Russian forces, fears of the Eurofighter arriving too late would be unfounded. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius stated that Germany supports the effort but doesn't have the training capacity or equipment to aid Ukraine with its bid to get F-16s or any other platform. This is sadly true, with the German Air Force being in a state of criminal disrepair and unable to meet NATO air operations commitments. Greece has a significant F-16 fleet of 150 planes, with 83 currently being upgraded to the latest Block 72 standard. These would be perfect for Ukraine, except for one small problem: Turkey. For years, under Erdogan's leadership, Turkey has been a thorn in NATO's side. And the NATO ally has threatened open hostilities with its neighbor and fellow NATO member Greece. This is not only putting the entire alliance in a weird spot, but it means Greece is not going to be willing to give up its F-16s unless someone like the US can make security guarantees in case of Turkish aggression. With a new presidential election in Turkey, though, there is hope that the relationship can be reset. Belgium, Denmark, and Norway are all willing to send their own F-16s to Ukraine, which puts up a possible 125 split between the three of them. However, all three countries are unlikely to provide all of their jets, so a more conservative estimate of about 20 airframes is likely. However, as F-35s arrive in Europe, it'll open up more F-16s for transfer. The Netherlands have 24 F-16s, all slated to be replaced by F-35s by mid-2024. While we all hope the war won't last that long, the odds are against a victory anytime soon. In a bit of good news though, the Netherlands did cancel a sale of 24 F-16s to Draken International, and that can only mean one thing: Ukraine is getting Dutch F-16s. And that's why the US has stated it wishes to create an effort for the long-term supply of Ukraine's Air Force, signaling that this will not be a one-time donation, but rather a long-term effort to bring Ukraine's Air Force up to Western standards. The US isn't just looking at keeping Ukraine's embattled Air Force in the fight for longer, it's actively planning for the shape of the Ukrainian military in a post-war world. With confirmation by NATO that Ukraine will join the alliance, the Ukrainian military will need to be rapidly westernized and brought into conformity with NATO's militaries. Its position right on the Russian border makes this a critical objective, ensuring Ukraine is able to field a strong and credible enough post-war deterrent that will mean Russia simply doesn't lick its wounds and reinvade a year later. If Ukraine were to remain weak in the post-war peace and be allowed to enter NATO, then it would open up the opportunity for Russia to launch the fait accompli attack against Ukraine. This was much feared in the lead-up to the Ukrainian war, although NATO planners feared it would happen in the Baltics, with Russia surging forces across the border of a Baltic nation to take a few villages and then simply dig in. In essence, Russia would be daring NATO to risk full-scale war over a few meaningless kilometers of the most vulnerable members, and if NATO did not respond, it would threaten breaking the alliance in two, or at least significantly undermining it. This is why it's important for the US that Ukraine be supplied with increasing amounts of Western equipment and its military brought up to NATO standards, not just in training, but in kit as well. A strong post-war Ukraine is the best way to guarantee peace with Russia. Estimates on the number of F-16s Ukraine could be getting in the next few months vary, with a dozen to 2 dozen, or even as many as 50. However, there are some significant hurdles to overcome, as equipping Ukraine with new fighter jets isn't as simple as just handing the keys over to the shiny new jets. First, pilots must be trained. Every fighter plane is different, but with some of the most experienced combat pilots in the world right now, Ukraine is well suited to put its Air Force through an F-16 crash course. Right now, the US is already evaluating a small group of Ukrainian aviators just to see how fast they might be able to bring them up to speed on the F-16. Rumors are training on a small scale has already been ongoing for months. As with most things in this war, the US is keeping pretty tight-lipped to deny Russia any vital intelligence. Assuming an accelerated course though, it'll take a few months for Ukrainian pilots to get the hang of their F-16s, meaning they might not see combat until this fall. Then there's the problem with the types of F-16s Ukraine might get. Not every F-16 is built the same. One of the world's most prolific fighter jets, the F-16 has received a series of block upgrades over the years to keep it competitive in a modern combat environment. However, not every nation has kept up with these block upgrades, and that can be problematic for Ukraine's pilots. Software incompatibility issues will also make it difficult for F-16s of different blocks to work together, and could pose a challenge to equipping F-16s with some of the more advanced and newer US weapons. Currently, a task force is looking into compatibility issues and what is the most efficient and best way to handle the issue, whether that's a crash
Alexa,
modernization
set a
program
timer
or
for
making sure
8:30
that
a.m.
entire squadrons are equipped with the same block F-16 to avoid conflict. On-the-ground logistics need to be sorted as well. Ukraine has to be supplied with a number of replacement parts, and its mechanics also need to be put through training to keep the F-16s in fighting shape. As we mentioned earlier, combat jets are incredibly complicated machines, though the F-16 is specifically designed to require little maintenance and work from a very austere environment. Originally, the F-16 was designed to be a cheap, easily mass-produced frontline fighter that could fly from damaged air bases in a worst-case Cold War scenario and then fight against the Soviet Union. It's not the best fighter in the world, but it is a very good one, and it's rugged to boot, making it possibly the best choice for Ukraine right now. But if the West wants to arm Ukraine quickly, they shouldn't be turning to European powers to donate their F-16s, because the largest F-16 fleets in the world aren't in Europe, they're in the Middle East. After the United States, Israel, Turkey, and Egypt respectively operate the second, third, and fourth largest F-16 fleets in the world. Israel has an estimated 175 F-16s and an additional 50 for training, and is no doubt currently feeling significant pressure to start thinking about donating some of them. Given its regional headaches, though, this is incredibly unlikely unless the US is ready to make some significant security guarantees. This will inevitably put it into conflict with Iran. Not anything new, but adding another potential headache that the US can currently ill afford. In the 2010s, Israel had a deal to sell Croatia 12 of its F-16s for $500 million. However, the US blocked the deal as Israel had done significant equipment upgrades to the combat jets, and the US feared that those sensitive components would fall into the wrong hands, despite Croatia being a NATO member. Given that any donated F-16s have a very high chance of being shot down and their wreckage captured by Russia, the US would likely demand that the equipment upgrades are stripped off the jets before they're transferred to Ukraine, though ultimately Israel's reluctance to provide significant military equipment means it's unlikely to donate its F-16s. In 2022, Israel refused to provide Ukraine with outdated MIM-23 Hawk air defense missiles built by the US. Sadly, Israel finds itself in a delicate situation with Russia. Russia allows it to carry out airstrikes against asymmetric threats in Syria, and in exchange, Israel isn't comfortable upsetting that relationship by providing arms to Ukraine. Turkey, meanwhile, has 270 F-16s and is in the middle of modernizing old Block 30 models to the latest standard. In October 2021, it placed an order for 40 new modern F-16s, along with modernization kits for an additional 79 airframes. However, the F-16 is the backbone of the Turkish air defense, and there is still significant bad blood between Turkey and the US over America's decision to kick Turkey out of the F-35 program. Granted, the move was brought on by Turkey purchasing Russian S-400 air defense systems after the US warned that Russia could use the system to gather data on the F-35. To deny Russia the opportunity to sniff out any F-35 secrets, the US kicked Ankara out of the program altogether. Now, Turkey is attempting to build its own fifth-generation aircraft, the TFX Khan, and is unlikely to give up any of its F-16s until its new fighter is operational. Egypt has a significant fleet with 220 F-16s. However, Egypt maintains strong ties to Russia, which will likely prevent it from providing any aircraft. The country already refused to donate or sell any of the MiGs it bought in the 2010s, and it remains angry at the US over its refusal to sell it the F-15. Yet there were signs that this could change even before the Ukraine war started, so perhaps the US could negotiate Egyptian F-16s in exchange for brand new F-15s. After these nations, modest fleets remain in the Middle East, but nobody's very incentivized to part ways with any of their airframes. Jordan's fleet of 40-plus airframes are all older models and make up a large part of its air force. With Iran having everyone on edge, it's unlikely to want to give up any of its aircraft, and even if it did, it likely wouldn't be worth it. The United Arab Emirates has a fleet of 80 Block 60 F-16s, which, when they were bought in the 1990s, were actually more modern than those flown by the US Air Force. However, the UAE is attempting to negotiate a political high-wire act as it courts Russia and China while trying to maintain its historic relations with the US. Given that neither China nor Russia could defend the nation from Iranian hostility, the US does have a bargaining chip it could use, albeit at the cost of greatly angering the UAE, which might just be worth it. After withdrawing from a deal to buy 50 F-35s in 2021, however, the UAE is unlikely to part with any of its jets. In the end, Ukraine is unlikely to receive more than a modest force of F-16s, all likely provided by the West. However, given the Russian Aerospace Force's horrible record in Ukraine, these F-16s will prove a significant threat to the continued Russian air operations, especially if equipped with long-range air-to-air missiles. But there's an even more important reason to supply Ukraine with F-16s, and one that could change the course of the war if not addressed. Ukraine's air defenses are currently a patchwork of its native Soviet-era systems and a slowly growing supply of modern Western batteries. However, the backbone of its air defense remains the Soviet S-300s and their like. And the world is quite literally running out of available inventory of missiles for these legacy systems. Both Ukraine's allies and Russia have been scouring the world for nations willing to give up their inventories, and those stockpiles are beginning to run dry. Russia can build new missiles, while the West has investigated the possibility of restarting old Soviet factories in former Eastern Bloc nations. America is also brainstorming possible ways of making its own air defense missiles compatible with Ukraine's Soviet launchers. There's some precedent for this, as U.S. engineers figured out how to hack Ukraine's MiGs so they could operate the U.S.-made high-speed anti-radiation missile, or the HARM. However, the hack didn't allow the MiG's mothership to employ the missile in its full effectiveness. F-16s for Ukraine are thus becoming imperative, especially as Ukraine recently announced that it likely only had a few months of air defense missiles left. Failing to plug this growing gap would be tragic, given that Ukraine today is intercepting an average of 95% of cruise and standoff attacks launched by Russia. But F-16s are also necessary because Russia has recently begun deploying glide bombs. These long-range standoff weapons are exactly what they sound like. Bombs with deployable wings. The U.S. has been using them for decades, and Russia has started to field them in significant quantities. Precision is still poor, as to be expected with Russia's relatively tech-poor combat platforms, but these bombs are a significant threat to Ukrainian civilians, and the worst part is that most air defenses simply can't protect from them. This is why Ukraine needs fighter jets, as the only way to protect from glide bomb attack is to keep their launch platforms under threat at range. This is where the F-16s would shine, only though if equipped with long-range air-to-air weapons such as the AIM-120. Russia's ground-based air defenses are still significant in number, and F-16s won't be able to operate close to the front lines for long. Inevitably, Ukraine will get its F-16s. How many, from where, and their ultimate impact on the war, though, remain unknown. Now check out deadly weapons the US is sending to Ukraine, or click this other video instead.
是的，长官。是的，长官。 长官，准备。立正！立正！
China's navy is catching up to the US, but while China's naval capability has come a long way from the Third Taiwan crisis, its apparent strength is not all it seems. Here's why. Here are two of the most powerful countries in the world. Both China, the fourth largest country in terms of area, spanning approximately 3.7 million square miles, and the United States, which is the third largest country by land area, covering about 3.8 million square miles, are major economic powers with substantial global significance. China has the world's second largest economy with a GDP of approximately $18.1 trillion in 2022. The United States, however, has the largest economy globally with a GDP of about $25.46 trillion in 2022. Okay, so the US has got China whipped when it comes to land area size and economic success, but what about military power? Well, here's where it gets scary. China aims to position itself as a significant global military power and has set its sights on achieving global dominance by 2049. Right now, China's Air Force ranks second globally, just behind the United States, which possesses the most formidable Air Force strength. According to reports, the United States operates approximately 10,000 more air platforms compared to China. In terms of total aircraft strength, China is listed as having 3,260 aircraft in service, while the United States boasts an impressive fleet of 13,233 aircraft. This substantial difference emphasizes the United States' superior air power and its larger operational aircraft count. But what about sea power? One of the markers of a superpower is the ability to project maritime power over long distances. States which have been able to do so have enormous influence in regional or world affairs and can exert huge leverage over their less capable rivals. It is therefore not surprising that as China's wealth has grown, it has invested heavily in its ambitions to create a blue water navy that it hopes will one day challenge the US Navy for supremacy, at least within the waters of its immediate neighborhood. But
是的，长官。是的，长官。是的，长官。集合！集合！
We're chilling.
是的，长官。集合！准备完毕，长官。
We are chilling. Once the war starts, I think we'll.
集合！是的，长官。准备！是的，长官。准备完毕，长官。起身。
I don't trust the commies. We need to get that third research slot. Yeah, for the missions to US. They're being built as we speak.
"是的，长官。" 准备。准备完毕，长官。是的，长官。
we go. The build up. Here we
是
go.
的，长官。
This is beautiful. Slaughtering them.
准备完毕，长官。立正。集合。准备完毕，长官。继续攻击。集合。 是的，长官。准备！准备完毕，长官。准备！准备！正在撤退，长官。是的，长官。继续攻击！后退！ 走。别动！隐蔽！有！出发！出发！出发！他们正在撤退，长官。让他们尝尝厉害！是的，长官。准备！是的，长官。他们正在撤退，长官。别声！有！准备完毕，长官。别声！是的，长官。是的，长官。准备！准备完毕，长官。准备完毕，长官。准备！ 前进！集合！来吧，开始行动！
Oh man.
是的，长官。是的，长官。
They can't make no games.
集合！是的，长官。准备完毕，长官。是的，长官。 集合！出发！集合！准备！出发！出发！ 准备完毕，长官。准备完毕，长官。出发！ 续前进！这，出发！准备！出发！出发！集合！
I think they gave up trying to fight me.
准备完毕，长官。出发！准备完毕，长官。准备！遭到攻击！是的，长官。是的，长官。是的，长官。准备完毕，长官。立正！是的，长官。
They gave up. They're just trying to push through the mountains now. 136,000. Pushing them back. Beautiful. Poor Japan. They're so... Oh my gosh, they lost so many troops. Let's go. Get that research slot now.
是的，长官。准备。准备。遭到攻击。 准备！遭到攻击！集合！
I'm just wasting manpower. Oh. Alright, let's exit here.